sector in Sri Lanka plays a pivotal role in the country's economy, contributing close to half of the country's monthly exports. And despite the many challenges, both on the local as well as the global front, this industry has remained resilient. Despite the many challenges, Sri Lankan apparel and textile exporters have also reached beyond our shores, expanding their global footprint. Today we have with us Mr. Hasitha Premaratne, Group Finance Director of Brandix Lanka, who's here to share with us a few insights into the industry and how he sees it evolving over the next couple of months. First off, thank you so much for being with us today. And to get right into the questions, on the global front, we're seeing inflation rising across many countries, and we're seeing interest rates also being raised globally. In this context, we're seeing several fears over possible recession in the next couple of months. How do you think the demand for apparel will be in this backdrop, and do you see certain regions being affected more than the others? And what are the segments that you're going to see most affected?
Yes, so if you look at the current global sentiment, we are clearly seeing a retail slowdown, particularly if you look at the US market, and that, for that matter, even in the Europe, for the reasons you said. And naturally, with that slowdown, there is a drop in the apparel buys. But that's not the only reason. We also have a challenge because some of the leading apparel, or most of the leading apparel brands have over the last few months have build up inventory, which means they have stock in hand to sell, and that kind of creates a double whammy, because on one side there is a drop in the demand and the sale, and on the other side they have inventory in hand, which means they have to cut down on the overall buy from the new orders. So this has been reflected across the globe, not only in Sri Lanka. It's not a problem of only Sri Lanka, but it's more to do with the rest of the global supply chain, which spans around China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, etc. And this drop in the overall numbers will be seen at least, I think, for about 6 to 9 months from the estimates we have today. So in that particular scenario, we should see somewhat a recovery coming towards in about 6 to 9 months time, and hopefully with the economic conditions improving, because we've seen some indications that it may not be a prolonged issue, but it will probably be getting back to stride sooner than later, which means obviously we can expect an improvement on apparel buy as well. When it comes to the categories, I think mostly the lower segment of the economy are the most impacted in this type of situation, because the cash crunch is most felt by the lower end of the pyramid. So as a result, the brands which supply to the lower segment will have a larger hit, as opposed to people who supply to the middle and the upper segments, who will probably have a lesser hit. But overall, there will be a drop, and there will be mostly the categories or these particular segments that will get mostly impacted. And I think if you take some of the lingerie and related segments, the impact will be relatively lower compared to some of the outerwear segments.
Do you see Sri Lanka being able to break away some of the demand that is being seen from Bangladesh and Vietnam, possibly due to a few competitive advantages that we're having right now due to our skill level as well as the depreciation of the rupee? What kind of edge do you see for us in the context of this entire global dynamic changing?
The currency depreciation has made Sri Lanka more competitive when it comes to the production cost, obviously in dollar terms. But having said that, there are certain elements of inflation that has skyrocketed in the last few months because of the imported inflation and also the other factors in the local economy. So we are clearly seeing the cost on one side in rupee terms increasing, but on the other side, the devaluation of the rupee has compensated that to a large extent and helped Sri Lanka to stay relatively competitive against the regional peers, even including India, Bangladesh and Vietnam. So in that sense, from a cost perspective, I think we can expect that competitiveness to attract orders, or if not attract, at least to maintain the orders.
What bottlenecks or challenges do you face in the industry at present, and what do you foresee in the next 12 months or so?
I think the local situation itself, what we are going through in Sri Lanka, is a bit of a challenging aspect, because when the global brands look at its risk mitigation strategies, if they see that there is a tendency to have a disruption to the supply base, then they tend to take decisions that may probably look at de-risking the capacities. So in that context, I think Sri Lanka has a challenge. But good news is, if you look at the last few months, we have run as an industry, despite all the problems that were there, despite all the shortages that were there, industry has operated fairly seamlessly, I must say. At least maybe 1 or 2 days maximum have been in a closure mode, but other than that, it has been fairly well operated and run. So brands know that we have been able to continuously supply despite all the ground level challenges. And if you look at the export numbers, it speaks, because the export numbers for June, July have been on record highs for apparel when you compare to the past. So in that light, obviously we have demonstrated as an industry how resilient we are despite the ground level challenges that are ongoing. So with things hopefully improving in the coming months, that element of the risk will somewhat ease off. That's what we can see from the local front. Global front, as I said, the demand related impact will continue to be a challenge for at least another 6 to 9 months. In the context of where we are today as an industry, I think it will be very important to stay resilient and ensure that we have a very good communication channel going with our customers, just to ensure that they know what's going on ground, not just the media take the message across, because obviously once this is quite a bit of a difference between what's seen in the media and what's actually happening on ground. So in that context, it's important that the communication goes through to make sure that the understanding is clear. And as we have been doing as an industry over the last maybe 30-40 years, we've seen so many bumps, so many ups and downs, but we've come out much stronger after each of these challenges, because it has been looked upon as an industry which is resilient.
Do you see opportunities for growth locally or internationally for Sri Lankan apparel or textile manufacturers in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think it's important to get our fundamentals in order. So for the people who bring the technology, bring the productivity up, and as a result drive the cost efficiencies in particular, and also look at the product innovation and related solutions, I think there is definitely potential to grow within the country, and not only that, also outside the country as well. Because in this industry, beyond a particular point, once a company grows, you need to have exposure in different geographies. Otherwise, buyers will look at you as a company which is only exposed in one geography. So as a result, when they try to mitigate the geographical risk spread, obviously your order book will be curtailed. So to avoid that, most of the large organizations we've seen have moved out of the country and set up manufacturing in different parts of the world, while of course we expand and keep our commitment in Sri Lanka. But what is important will be to ensure that both in the country as well as internationally, we embrace the technology, change the way we operate, and move with the industry and the market in such a way that we won't get obsolete. Now, if you do that, there will be enough opportunities for growth.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Hasitha, and thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for our next episode.